Hi, this is Edward Smith, video game correspondent with IB Times UK, here in Leamington Spa to speak with Forza Horizon developers Playground Games.
Well, Playground Games is a relatively young developer, I guess, in the scheme of things. We set up early 2010, so we just had our third birthday a couple of months ago. So we haven't been going all that long. We've done quite a lot in that short space of time. We launched our first title, our debut, last October, Forza Horizon. It's a new installment in Microsoft's flagship Forza franchise, since then we've been supporting that game with DLC every month, downloadable car packs, and also two really sort of substantial and high quality expansions. You know, we released a rally expansion before Christmas. We recently released the 1000 Club expansion, and that's kept the studio busy since the launch.
We had a period of really a year where we went from the 16 people to 85, 90 people, and then there's been a little bit of extra growth since. So it was actually quite a condensed period where we hired a lot of people, and there was a lot of, as you can imagine, challenges with sort of bringing that many people into a business, not just finding them, but integrating them, building them into a team, getting them all aligned and heading in the same direction, making sure they all had the same vision of the game we wanted to build. So there was lots of operational issues, just giving them kit, making sure our IT infrastructure went from looking after 16 guys on a network who needed to send email to having a team of 100 people who needed to store 30 terabytes of data. You know, those sort of challenges were quite difficult, both in terms of time, making it land fast enough, and just in money as well. It cost a lot of money to fund that type of growth.
So it took us the best part of a year from when we set up to when we actually signed that deal to work on the title. We had a lot of things going in our favour, and the core team here at Playground have a long history of making really high quality racing games. So that was definitely in our pros column. Against us though was the fact that we were just a bunch of guys in a room, and we weren't very much more than that for the first year. And it was really down to, I think, the vision of the guys we were speaking to at Microsoft and at Turn 10 Studios, to see past that and to have belief in us that we could scale in a very short space of time to be able to produce a AAA title like Forza Horizon. Right. And I think they took an enormous leap of faith in backing us to do that. I also think we've paid them back in spades by being able to do it.
We have a very creatively led studio, and I think that makes us a little bit different to other UK studios. There are other creative UK studios like Rockstar and stuff, but actually there's a lot of UK studios that base their whole business on technology and how games are made rather than creativity and excellence. And I think that helped us. And we were really proud actually that Microsoft, Turn 10, who we work with, is an American company, and they came to a British company. They run an RFP process, which is where they get bids for different people. And I think this process started out with 29 developers worldwide, then went down to the final 5, and then they chose us. And there was quite a lot of interest in that because they'd come to a British company, an American company had come to a British company, a British developer. But the UK has a good track record in making racing games. I guess that's one of the genres we sort of own.
Without telling you exactly how much Forza Horizon cost, I think to be in what you would term the AAA bracket, you're talking tens of millions of dollars. And obviously, as we know, there are titles which run far, far more expensive than that. Development costs will go up for the next generation. Perhaps not necessarily in terms of team size, but in terms of the kind of assets we'll need to be producing, the kind of quality that they will have to have is going to make our workflow much more complicated, and everything, all the items that we need to create for the game, much more complicated as well. So you'll see costs increase, although perhaps not as much as some people are estimating.
So I think that the UK industry now isn't full of these big studios. For a time, it was literally that's all it was. You know, maybe 5-6 years ago, it was just a bunch of big 150 to 100 man studios, maybe even bigger, building big console games. You know, and that was it. That was the UK industry. Whereas I think now there's this massive diversity of people doing different things. And one of the exciting things is, two guys, you don't have to get a job. You know, if you have the inclination and you're good enough, you can just set your own company up and build an iPhone game. You know, and okay, it's a traffic jam and, you know, there's a lot of other games out there, but you can do it. You know, you can release your own game. And I think we've gone almost full circle to right back to the sort of Spectrum and Amstrad days where, you know, when I first got into the industry and you could do that. So I think it's changed a lot recently.
There's been a huge amount of discussion about tax incentives in the UK, and obviously we're always pointed to places like Canada where that kind of incentive is already in place. We don't plan our business based on those incentives becoming a reality. You know, we would be, I think, silly to do so. We started off our business and have built it to the extent that you see today based on initial investment from directors here and working with our partners at Microsoft. Tax incentives would help, but I'm sure it would be a good thing for the UK industry. But I genuinely don't think it's make or break for any company. And I think it certainly shouldn't be, or else I think your business isn't set up in the correct way.
The tax breaks are great. And at the moment I think they're blocked in Europe somewhere. But I was part of some of the committees and groups that lobbied government to help with that. However, to me it's gravy. Like we've never had any investment in our business. We funded it all ourselves until we got the deal with Microsoft. And I think we've never relied on anyone else for anything. So I think it would be great. I'd love some money. You know, I think any help the industry can get. It has to be meaningful though, and it has to grow the industry properly. So some of the other areas, and I won't say where they are, but they get quoted quite a lot in North America, that had tax breaks. Those tax breaks ran out, and then the industry collapses because everybody just moves on and goes somewhere else. So there's some big parts of the industry in North America where, you know, it's very well funded, people set up studios there, they made some games. It was a finite pot of money that district's government was willing to put into it, that money ran out, all those studios got closed down. You know, so I think that's really unhealthy. I think it has to be something that can sustain the industry. I think help for smaller companies, I'm not sure that would help us now. We're sort of pretty stable and we're sort of up and running. But when you first start out, that's the hardest bit. The first year, oh God, you know, you're not on the first rung of the ladder. You're in a hole underneath the ladder. You know, it's really difficult. And just getting going, any help for companies at that point, I think that's where it's most valuable. For a company like ours now, it doesn't really make any sense. You know, if we can't sustain ourselves at this point, then we're not a good business. You know, we don't deserve to survive. You know, and I have quite a strange view of this. You know, I'm not sure everybody agrees, but I think, you know, any help for companies when they're first starting out, help with growth. You know, when you're hiring, we spend a lot of money hiring. We created at our peak 112 actually, 112 jobs here, but we never got any sort of credit or help with that. I think that would be interesting. I think sometimes we don't get enough positive PR as an industry because we still have a bit of stigma attached to us that it's games. You know, when the economy's in trouble, surely you should be putting money into things other than games, whereas actually as an entertainment media, you know, we rival DVD and film and cinema, but I still think there's a stigma attached to it that would be really good to overcome.
I hear the word Americanized quite a lot, and it's usually used as a pejorative. I'm not sure I necessarily buy into that. You know, when I think about not just video games, but the entertainment content that I enjoy, you know, films, television, a great deal of it is American, and I don't see the fact that it's set in America or features American accents as necessarily a bad thing, something which detracts from my enjoyment of it. I think the same is true of video games, and I also think it makes good commercial sense to make sure, not necessarily that your product is completely tailored to an American audience, but certainly to make sure that it's not alien to an American audience, because as you rightly point out, it is a huge market for us. I'm also not 100% sure what a British game is. I think in years, maybe decades past, there was more of a sense of what that might have been. You know, if you go back to the 8-bit days, there was more a sense of what Britishness, and sometimes I guess that's another word for eccentricity, you know, can manifest itself. But these days, I'm not entirely sure what a British game might be, or what this great British game that is somehow being prevented from happening by Americanisation. I'm not sure what that is. No. You do see, and perhaps not at the very top of the AAA market, but certainly you do see in other places in games, British games which are British made and perhaps even have a quintessentially British feel to them. I'm thinking of Dear Esther, for example, seems like the most obvious example at the moment. So those games do happen, but I'm not convinced that there's, even in Britain, a market which is crying out for the faulty towers of video games, for example.
I have a very Darwinian sort of theory about this stuff, and I don't believe any industry has an entitlement to succeed. You succeed because you're good, and if you're not good, then the bad things happen. And I think the industry just got a bit too bloated, and so there's a bit of self-selection going on, and there's also a little bit of I guess resetting. Some of these studios got too big, and there was too many console games being made, and a bunch of those weren't making any money. Whereas the publishers now carry much smaller portfolios because their risk profile sort of reduced a little bit. They don't carry as many games, and so there's just less games to pitch for. But I think there's still as many people in the industry. They're just doing different things.
Next time on the Game Studio Spotlight series, we visit Guildford to meet Strike Suit Zero developer Born Ready Games.